I'm Erin Caldwell, 26, top of my biomedical engineering class, inventor of a prototype that could save lives. But at my brother's white coat ceremony, I wasn't even offered dessert. The lamb was perfectly roasted, the wine imported, the applause reserved for Dylan. I sat at the far end of the table where the servers stack trays and no one remembers names. Mom told the waiter I didn't need sweets. Dad toasted to the family legacy, a legacy that never had my name on it. That night, I walked 2 blocks in heels that didn't fit and lungs that couldn't breathe. And when I got home, I opened a folder, one I'd kept hidden for years. Inside, a line item, Caldwell Family Trust. Tuition payment? Dylan, $150,000. And next to my name, not included, per parental request. That's when I stopped waiting for them to see me and started preparing to make sure the world did. Before I tell you what happened next, the courtroom, the patent, the scandal, drop a comment if you've ever been the child they forgot. Or worse, the one they pretended didn't exist. And hit subscribe. Because this isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about evidence. And how sometimes all it takes to bring down a legacy is a signature they thought no one would ever read. The hum of the ceiling fan cut through the thick summer heat as I adjusted the angle of the old AC unit in my bedroom. It hissed like it always did, loud and unreliable, kind of like the promises my parents made when I turned 15 about helping with college. I sat on my bed staring at the hallway shadows dancing under the door. Downstairs, laughter exploded from the dining room laughter that didn't include me. A chorus of clinking silverware followed by a cheers told me Dylan had made his announcement. They accepted me, Duke School of Medicine. His voice rang out like a victory cry. I could picture him now standing in the center of the dining table, arms spread like he was already some miracle surgeon. And they, my parents, would be circling him like planets to a sun. I closed my sketchbook, the edge of a graphite schematic for a circuit board smudging my thumb. The drawing was based on a machine I'd once tried building in the garage, an early idea. Crude, fragile, but it worked for 5 seconds when I was 12. No one noticed. No one cared. But they noticed Dylan. Always. I headed downstairs, footsteps silent, slipping past the threshold like a ghost. The table was a mess of candles, crystal glasses, roasted lamb, and laughter. Dylan looked polished in his button-down. Mom had even brought out the good napkins. "Erin," Dad barked, not turning from his plate. "Help clear the dishes, will you?" I hesitated. "You heard him," Mom added, tilting her wineglass without looking at me. "You're good with your hands anyway." Dylan chuckled into his drink. "Maybe she can invent a dish-cleaning robot next." They laughed. I didn't. I stacked the plates carefully, suppressing every acidic word rising in my throat. They weren't worth it yet. In the kitchen, the clang of plates in the sink echoed like my heartbeat. Grandma Ruth sat at the edge of the counter, hands folded on her lap, eyes unreadable behind her thick glasses. She hadn't said a word during dinner, but she'd watched. She always did. I rinsed the plates under cold water, my hands aching. The laughter in the dining room faded into the distant murmur of post-glory gossip. They were already talking about internships, med school, dorms, futures funded by savings that mysteriously had no room for my name. I turned to Ruth. "Do you think I'm overreacting?" She said nothing, just walked over with a slowness that carried gravity and placed a weathered hand on my shoulder. Her fingers, thin and cool, trembled just slightly. "Remember this?" she whispered. "You'll need it later." Then she turned and shuffled away, leaving behind the scent of lavender and old books. Later that night in my room, I dug out the notebook I'd left buried under textbooks, Grandma Ruth's gift from 2 years ago. Its cover was cracked leather, soft from wear. I hadn't opened it since the day she gave it to me. Inside the front cover, in her slanted script, a line stared back at me. "Don't let them write you off." They had money, just not for me. The fluorescent lights of the downtown branch bank hummed overhead as I fidgeted in line, clutching my folder of documents. The air conditioning blasted through the vents, a stark contrast to the warm August afternoon outside. I was here to open a simple account, just a place to stash the $1,000 scholarship I'd clawed together from community essays and random state contests. Small, but it was mine. I stepped forward when the next window opened. A middle-aged teller with cropped hair and a polite smile greeted me. Good afternoon. How can I help you today? I need to open a student savings account, I said, for scholarship funds. She nodded and started typing. Name, Erin Caldwell. Her fingers paused on the keyboard. Caldwell. Any relation to Joanna Caldwell? I blinked. She's my mother. Got it, the teller said, smiling. You might already have a linked profile then. 1 second. She turned the monitor slightly away as she navigated the system. I glanced down, trying to stay calm. I wasn't here to snoop. But my last name seemed to open doors I hadn't intended to look through. She muttered. Looks like you're not linked to the family trust, just FYI. But I do see a scholarship account open today for you. Would you like to review the details? Wait, what? Family trust, I asked, voice neutral. Oh, just a high-tier private account. It's restricted access, though. She smiled again, completely unaware of the tremor she'd just sent through me. Restricted, high-tier, family trust. I stared at her hands, now flipping through the printouts. One page had the Caldwell Family Trust letterhead in bold. She slid it into a folder without realizing I saw the top line: withdrawal, $150,000, tuition payment. I swallowed hard. Could you show me that again? I asked, feigning confusion. I think I missed something about the account name. She hesitated. Let me double-check something. While she was distracted on the phone, I leaned forward, eyes catching more text. Payment purpose Dylan, 3-year tuition package. My breath caught. So there it was. Real, tangible. They had money. Not just some vague promise of savings, but a fund. A fund they accessed. For him. Only him. I excused myself and stepped into the corner near the ATM machines, pulling out my phone. Mom, I said when she picked up. My voice stayed even. I'd practiced this. She was busy. I could hear Dylan in the background, probably getting fitted for a blazer. Do we have a family trust account? I asked. A pause. Why do you ask? I overheard something at the bank. Something about a tuition payment. Another pause. Sharper now. Erin, it's none of your business. I let the silence sit. You need to focus on getting a scholarship. She continued, tone cold. Not everyone gets things handed to them. I almost laughed. She hung up before I could answer. Classic. I returned to the counter. The teller had stepped away and her desk was unattended for a moment. The folder sat there. Open. The top page, the transcript. I glanced left. Right. My hand moved before my conscience could catch up. I tapped the screen and hit print previous. A copy slid out from the side printer. I grabbed it, folded it once, slid it deep into my bag. Back home, I locked my door and laid it flat on my desk. The print was faded in places, but one line stood out in crystal clarity. Payment purpose Dylan, 3-year tuition package. My hands trembled, but not from sadness anymore. I had proof now. Not just suspicion, not just neglect. Something real. Something they wouldn't see coming. While Dylan cut open cadavers, I built a prototype that could save actual lives. The basement lab smelled faintly of ethanol and coffee grounds, a mix I'd grown weirdly fond of over the semesters. A chorus of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere behind me, the incubator hummed with low, measured heat. I was alone at my workstation, the windowless walls a comfort, not a prison. Straw number 6 is stable, I murmured, leaning closer. The array on the table looked ridiculous to anyone unfamiliar. 8 plastic straws mounted to a square base, each tipped with a color-changing sensor strip. Low-cost, sensitive, disposable, just like I needed it. I pulled up my laptop and entered today's readings. VOC levels were in range. The sensor had responded to the trace biomarkers we'd extracted from the cell culture with alarming precision. A grin tugged at my lips. I'd been chasing this result for months. Still playing with juice boxes? Natalie's voice teased from the other side of the partition. I turned toward her. They're diagnostic straws now, thank you very much, she snorted. Still looks like a recycled science fair. And yet this recycled science fair just outperformed the gold standard for early pancreatic cancer detection. That shut her up for now. A shadow passed the glass door. Dr. Torres. She walked in, briskly, gray curls bouncing slightly. Any updates, Caldwell? I turned the laptop toward her. The polymer sensors are consistent. The VOC reaction spikes clearly in response to the early stage culture samples. She bent over the screen, squinting. Repeatable. Twice now. 3, and you can talk to the publication board. I nodded. Already scheduled another run tonight. She didn't smile, but her voice softened. Good work. Torres was always sharp-edged, never effusive. But I'd learned to hear the praise buried in her efficiency. She tapped a finger against her temple. Keep it quiet for now. If what you've built is real, and I suspect it is, you need to protect it. I nodded again. Have you started filing? She asked. Not yet. My fingers twitched. Well, don't wait. And for God's sake, don't use your full name on the application. Stay anonymous at least until it's validated. Later that night, I sat alone in the darkened student lounge, my laptop illuminating my face as the cursor blinked in the name field. Inventor R.E. Caldwell. It felt strange, like I was creating a shadow version of myself, someone who wasn't weighed down by the Caldwell name but could still turn it into something powerful. I hesitated only once, then hit submit. The application filed. The patent clock started ticking. The next day, Torres stopped by my workstation as I calibrated the sensor array for test 3. She scanned the setup, brows lifting. You used household polymers for these? I nodded. The idea came from when I was a kid. I used to strip wires and play with the plastic casings, mixed them with food dyes to make fake circuits. She picked up one straw and turned it over. This thing, she murmured almost to herself, this thing could be bigger than you imagine. Everyone was celebrating Dylan's white coat ceremony. I wasn't even offered dessert. The restaurant smelled of aged wine, buttered steak, and candle wax, a scent I'd grown to associate with other people's victories. The Caldwell clan had rented out the back room of Lucienne's, one of the priciest places in Milwaukee, to celebrate Dylan's white coat ceremony. I ran a finger around the rim of my water glass, the ice already melted. Dylan sat at the head of the table, basking in it like a sun god. His girlfriend, someone new, tall blonde, probably pre-dental, laughed at everything he said. The others, cousins, family friends, and even a couple of Dylan's professors leaned in like bees to a blooming narcissus. I, on the other hand, had been placed all the way at the far end, squeezed between a barely working HVAC vent and the server station. The table was long enough that I couldn't hear most of what was said. Not that anyone was speaking to me. The waitstaff glided by, bringing bread baskets and trays of wine glasses. Mom turned to the server. She'll just have water, she said, pointing toward me. She doesn't drink, and no dessert. I blinked. I didn't even order anything yet. Joanna gave me a smile so tight it may as well have been duct tape. It's just better to keep things simple. You're not a fan of sweets anyway, right? I stared at her, then at the empty plate in front of me. That's not true. She turned back to her conversation with Dylan's attending. I was dismissed. Across the table, Dylan leaned back in his chair, one hand still on his girlfriend's thigh. I'm good, but not everyone needs to be a doctor. Some of us can be great, others can tinker. His words didn't land on me directly, but I felt them like broken glass in a shoe. My fork was still resting neatly on my napkin. I hadn't touched the bread. I hadn't spoken since the waiter brought me my water. Dad stood to make a toast. To Dylan, he announced, raising his wineglass. The future Dr. Caldwell. May you carry the family name with honor and brilliance. Chairs scraped back, glasses clinked. I raised mine too, a silent, cynical gesture, and didn't drink. Dinner was delayed due to the chef preparing Dylan's special cut. My stomach growled once. I ignored it. Then twice. No one noticed when I stood up. My chair made the softest sound. No clash, no scene. I walked past the servers arranging charcuterie, past the restrooms, past the wine wall with its curated vintages and quiet dignity. Outside, the June air felt like a slap, warm, sticky, and uncaring. I walked a block, then 2. Eventually sat on a bench across from the lake watching sailboats bob like they were free. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel like it. It was something colder, tighter, quieter than sadness. It was a knot in my chest that had stopped asking to be untied. An hour later, I returned for my jacket. As I passed the private room, I caught Dylan's voice through the open door. He was leaning toward his girlfriend, voice low, but not enough to disappear completely. She'll invent something one day. Maybe. Then a laugh, then silence. That night I stopped waiting for them to see me. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet for the thoughts hammering in my head. I sat on the worn-out futon, a cup of stale chamomile tea, cooling in my hands, the glow of my laptop washing the walls in a tired blue. My shoes were still on. The keys were still dangling in the door. I hadn't even bothered to change out of the blazer I wore to Dylan's dinner. I clicked on the audio file. She'll invent something one day. Maybe. His voice was as clear as if he were in the room hovering with that lazy smirk. I replayed it, again and again, until the tea had gone cold and my knuckles had turned white. Maybe. That word had floated over me at the restaurant like a balloon, soft, harmless, and utterly hollow. But here in the silence, it pressed on my lungs like smoke. I closed the file and leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. There would be no more maybe. The Zoom alert pinged. Natalie's face popped onto the screen, framed by the buzz of fluorescent lab lighting. "You look like you got hit by a truck," she said flatly. "Family dinner," I muttered. "Ah, say no more." She angled the webcam as she shuffled through papers. "Quick heads up, the testing team from Catalyx wants to meet with you. Dr. Torres said your data is already being circulated." My chest tightened, not from nerves but from a fire trying to stretch its wings. "When?" "Probably end of next week. They want to verify the replicability, and get this. They're calling it an early disruptor for non-invasive diagnostics." I nodded, fingers twitching near the touchpad. "Also," Natalie added, "don't tell anyone yet, but Torres said to prep your authorship docs. She's protecting the IP angle." "Already filed," I said, "under R.E. Caldwell." Her eyes widened a little. "You think ahead." "I've had to." We signed off. I closed the laptop. The room felt darker now. I reached into the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the faded leather-bound book, Ruth's notebook. The pages had softened from years of touch, but the ink was still crisp, written in that slanted, elegant hand of hers. I flipped to a bookmarked page. The paper was marked with a single line she'd underlined twice. "Rise without rage, but rise." Grandma Ruth never shouted. She never demanded. But her quiet strength was carved into every margin of this book. She had seen things I hadn't, fought battles I never asked about, and now her words found me like a lighthouse in fog. I set the notebook beside me and opened a blank draft in my email. To legalhypadvocate@chicago.com. Subject: provisional patent and inventor protection inquiry. I typed slowly, at first laying out the basics, my invention, its current status, the pseudonym, and the urgency. Then came the final line. I paused, breathed in the quiet, and typed, "It's time to correct what they ignored." I didn't need to yell, I just needed receipts. The hallway smelled like dust and lemon wax, the kind janitors use when no one's really watching. Grandpa's old accounting office had been shuttered since 2018, but the building was still standing barely. The paint peeled in strips from the trim, and the carpet squished underfoot like it held ghosts. I wasn't supposed to be here. But some things weren't supposed to be buried. Mr. George, the building's caretaker, met me at the side entrance. He was stooped gray and slow-moving, but his eyes were sharp. "You sure your granddad would have wanted you poking around in his files?" I offered a thin smile. He'd want the numbers to speak. George unlocked the door, hesitated. "There's mold in the back room. Don't stay long." Inside, the air was cold and paper dry. Stacks of folders lined the file cabinets like tombstones. I flicked on the light, and the old fluorescent tube buzzed once before flickering into a sickly glow. The Caldwell family trust file was tucked behind rows of tax documents, thick-bound in a red folder labeled with my father's handwriting. I sat at the desk, heart thudding. The first page was a contract from 2015 signed by Mark Caldwell. It detailed allocations of assets, education funds, contingencies. My name was nowhere. I flipped through it slowly. Dylan Caldwell, $150,000. Tuition installments over 3 years. Dylan Caldwell, $12,000. Relocation and housing grant. Dylan Caldwell, $3,200. Initial wardrobe and formal wear. Each line hit like a stone. I turned to the last section, a handwritten addendum scrawled in blue ink. Aaron not included, per parental request. The air rushed out of me. I pressed a hand to my chest. It wasn't shock. It was confirmation proof that this wasn't an oversight or mistake. It was a decision. Deliberate. Final. A soft knock startled me. I turned. A woman stood in the doorway. Young Asian American, maybe mid-20s, holding a stack of casebooks. Sorry, Mr. George said someone was down here. I didn't think. I stood. I'm just reviewing some family documents. She stepped in, brows raised. Caldwell. I nodded. I'm Emma. Law student. I help George manage some of the building's legal records. She glanced at the file on the desk. You're sitting on a breach of fiduciary duty. Maybe more. I blinked. You're not kidding. Not at all. If your parents set up a trust in your name and then deliberately excluded you while favoring a sibling, depending on how it was filed, that's actionable. I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed statement from the bank, the one I'd kept since 2019. Emma leaned over it, her lips parted. This matches the date on the trust payment. And I've got audio from Dylan too, I added. She looked at me serious now. If you can get 2 more corroborating documents, say a signed waiver or bank records showing your name was intentionally left off, you might actually have a case. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The room felt suddenly heavier, like I was holding something radioactive but powerful. Emma straightened. Let me know when you're ready. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. You might actually have a case. I dropped one line and watched the panic ripple. The sun baked the concrete steps of the Northwestern Amphitheater, where folding chairs sat in meticulous rows beneath a cobalt sky. Purple banners flapped lazily in the breeze, casting soft shadows over robed graduates, shifting in their seats. From the stage, I could see the lake in the distance, wide, unbothered, unreachable. My palms were dry, steady. I had practiced this speech dozens of times, each version sharper than the last, but today wasn't about elegance. It was about precision. Behind me, the provost adjusted the microphone. Aaron Caldwell, recipient of the Innovators in Biomedicine Award, please come forward. The applause was polite. I walked up slowly, each step echoing like a metronome inside my chest. I didn't glance at the audience yet. Not yet. Thank you, I began. 4 years ago, I entered this program with nothing but a backpack, a few secondhand lab tools, and a question. Why does it take so long for people to listen? A rustle in the crowd. I didn't have a name that opened doors. I didn't have capital. But I had curiosity. And I had time, because when people don't expect much of you, they give you space. And in that space, I built something. I could feel eyes on me now, not just from students and faculty. My family was seated in row 4. I saw Dad's folded arms, Mom's half smile, Dylan's hand curled over his knee, bouncing slightly. I took a breath. I'm honored that the device I developed, which began as a toy sensor built from straws and foil, is now being piloted for early pancreatic cancer detection. Applause again. Warmer, real. But, I continued, this isn't just a celebration of science. It's a lesson about who we believe in, about who we choose to invest in. Silence stretched. Sometimes, I said, pausing just enough to taste the air, people fund the wrong child. Gasps, a few murmurs. I ended the sentence with a small nod, letting it hang like a storm cloud. The applause came scattered and unsure at first, then building, though not from the 4th row. From them, there was only stillness. When I stepped down from the podium, I walked past them deliberately. Mom didn't look at me. Dad's mouth was a tight line. Dylan wore sunglasses, but I could feel his eyes beneath them. 2 sharp points trying to pierce the armor I'd carefully built. Natalie met me near the faculty row, smiling wide. You dropped a bomb. Just a spark, I replied. In the parking lot, as families swarmed with bouquets and balloons, I sat on a bench to catch my breath. Emma was nearby, her sunglasses low on her nose, pretending to read. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The trap was set. A few minutes later, I caught a whisper. She knows. Mom said to Dad, too quiet for anyone but me and maybe Emma to hear. And then I saw Dylan standing off to the side, his phone half concealed by his sleeve. His thumbs moved quickly. I couldn't see the whole message, but I caught the first words before he hit send plan B. She's moving. Sometimes the signature they forgot becomes the one that ends them. The walls of Emma's law office were bare except for a faded diploma and a single quote framed in black: "Justice is rarely convenient." The place smelled like old books and lemon tea sharp-focused like the woman who ran it. Emma had already stacked the documents across the conference table by the time I arrived. The Caldwell Family Trust contract lay at the center, unfolded like a confession. "The key," she said, tapping the page, "is this clause here." Her fingernail stopped under a line that read, "Educational disbursements shall apply to direct descendants pending written inclusion." I looked closer. Next to Dylan's name was a small box marked confirmed. Next to mine, a slash, a deliberate omission, not empty, crossed out. She flipped to the addendum. "There it is," she murmured. "Signed by both your parents in 2015. Specific instruction Dylan Caldwell to be sole beneficiary for education-related disbursements." I swallowed. And the word sole? That's enough. In a discrimination claim, if we can show intent, yes, especially if paired with verbal or written evidence like the bank statement or what your mom said on the phone. The door opened. Natalie walked in, her hands full of coffee cups. "Double espresso for the brave," she said, handing me one. I smiled faintly. "Is there a flavor for prepared to be hated by your entire family?" "Hazelnut," she quipped, "with legal firepower." Emma chuckled, then looked toward the hallway. "Mr. Kent is joining us today. He's got experience with family foundation lawsuits." Seconds later, an older man stepped in gray suit, silver watch. No nonsense. Mr. Kent. He carried a yellow legal pad and a voice that seemed to cut through furniture. "I've reviewed the documents Ms. Lee forwarded," he began. "This isn't just a case of unfairness. It borders on fraud. If your parents presented this as a neutral trust but privately assigned it to favor one child, that's civil court territory." He looked at me. "You'll need to disclose everything: financials, emails, testimonies. Are you prepared for that?" I nodded. "I've been prepared since I saw the line that said I wasn't included." Mr. Kent leaned back. "Good, because once we file, they'll try to bury you in paper cuts. Distractions. Shame tactics. It won't be clean." Emma passed me a form, the authorization to initiate review and counsel. "Once you sign this," she said, "we draft a formal letter of notice. Then we move." The pen in my hand felt heavier than it should. I glanced at Natalie, who gave a small nod. Then I signed my name. Aaron Caldwell. Not Ari Caldwell. Not some ghost on the periphery. Me. "I'm not backing down," I said. Emma gathered the documents into a folder already in motion. "Then neither are we." Mr. Kent stood. "Expect a phone call before week's end. Probably from one of their lawyers. Or someone worse." I raised an eyebrow. "Worse?" Emma met my eyes. Her voice was low. "They'll come after you before court does." My family didn't just ignore me. They prepared to destroy me. The email came at 10:42 p.m. sharp, just as I was setting my laptop down for the night. The subject line read, "Urgent Inquiry." Your device and the sender was someone I'd never heard of, Scott R. Delaney. No affiliation, no signature. Just a single line. "I'm writing an expose on prototype theft and possible misconduct. You may want to comment before publication." My heart thudded once, then again, slower, heavier. Attached was a screenshot. My name highlighted. The phrase "unauthorized use of research materials" circled in red. I stared at it, breath still. Seconds later, a second email arrived, a full article draft from a blog titled "Biotech Ethics Review," dated for the next morning. The headline read, "Breaking: Did a Northwestern graduate steal lab data for a multi-million-dollar patent?" Below that, a photo of me, a still from my graduation speech. My face frozen in a triumphant smile, now hijacked for something vicious. My inbox pinged again. A message from the university. "We are aware of recent allegations and are initiating a preliminary review. Until the matter is resolved, your speaking engagement at the NIBCC conference is suspended." I felt the floor shift beneath me. Just days ago, I had stood on a stage earning applause. Now I was being painted a thief. I dialed Emma. "This was too fast," she said after I forwarded the article. "This wasn't random. Someone fed them this, And if the university is reacting this quickly, the leak came from someone inside. Natalie called next. "Do you want me to say something publicly?" she asked. "No," I said. "They want me reactive. I'm going quiet until we counter." That didn't stop the storm. By morning, the article had spread. Anonymous forums speculated about a family feud. Some users posted screenshots of my patent filing, twisting the pseudonym R.E. Caldwell into evidence of deception. Others shared grainy photos from the lab taken without permission. I didn't know how they got those images. Then came the final blow. A clip aired on a local channel, an offhand comment from my mother dressed in muted gray, clutching a string of pearls. "I love both my children," she said with a perfectly measured smile, "but sometimes ambition blinds good judgment. I hope Erin gets the help she needs." She didn't mention the fund, or the years they shut me out. Just that, the help she needs. I stood frozen in my kitchen phone, shaking in my hand. That was their strategy now. Not just erasing me, discrediting me. Dylan didn't bother pretending. His text came at noon. "You should have stayed silent, sis." Before they buried me, I had already buried the truth. The basement archive room at Northwestern smelled like chilled dust and ozone. Rows of servers blinked in silence, humming like they were guarding secrets older than memory. Natalie's access badge clicked against the reader. A green light. The door buzzed open. She turned to me. "You sure you want to see what's buried in here?" I nodded. They made their move. Now it's mine. We walked in. The log retrieval system wasn't complicated if you knew what to search for. Natalie typed rapidly, pulling up records from our third-year cancer detection project. Test sequences, sensor calibrations, and submission drafts began to fill the screen. "Look here," she pointed. "File tagged VOCScan V1.2 final.be uploaded August 14th, 2023. That was 8 months before Dylan had even claimed to start his capstone. I opened the file. On the bottom corner, clear as sunlight, sat the author tag R.E. Caldwell. Natalie exhaled. There it is, the original. We kept digging emails between me and Dr. Torres, a submission queue log showing my access ID metadata timestamps, all untouched. My phone vibrated. "Emma." "Put me on speaker," I said. Natalie nodded. Emma's voice filled the room. "Any luck?" "We found everything," I replied. "Time-stamped logs, author tags, metadata, and the original technical document. And the filing date. 8 months ahead of anything Dylan could have submitted." There was a pause. Then another voice came through Dr. Torres. "I've reviewed the logs," he said. "Erin's device, her methodology, even the initial notes, they're all hers. I told her to back up everything under a pseudonym before publication. That's why R.E. Caldwell exists." "Will you testify to that?" Emma asked. "I will," he said without hesitation. "What they're doing to her is not just unethical. It's criminal." I stared at the screen as Natalie downloaded the files to a secure drive. This," she said, "is your grenade." Emma's voice sharpened. "Erin, I need you to forward the original technical description. Include the signature, the date, and any correspondence with Dr. Torres. Then I'll prepare the preliminary court filing." I looked at the file one more time before hitting send. Subject: original IP filing, R.E. Caldwell attachment, VOC scan, V1.22 final.df. Within minutes, Emma replied with one line. "We're ready to bring this to court." I didn't need vengeance, I needed the truth under oath. The fluorescent lights inside the Chicago Central District Attorney's office hummed quietly, almost in sync with the tension crawling up the back of my neck. The conference room wasn't large, but the air felt thick like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I took my seat across from Mr. Klein, the Caldwell family's attorney, and beside me, Emma laid a neatly tabbed binder on the table. Each divider was a chapter in the war I hadn't asked for, but could no longer avoid. On the far side of the room, Dylan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Natalie sat behind me silent, but I could feel her gaze pressing steady against the back of my shoulder. Reassuring, unflinching. Mr. Klein adjusted his cufflinks. "Ms. Caldwell, thank you for being here. As you're aware, this is a preliminary evidentiary hearing, not a trial. We're here to evaluate the merit of your claims. I gave a small nod. Emma spoke first. We're prepared to demonstrate that Aaron Caldwell is the sole inventor and rightful intellectual property holder of the VOC SCAN medical device currently in patent dispute. Additionally, we will submit evidence of financial discrimination within the Caldwell Family Trust that may constitute civil misconduct. Klein's brow twitched, but he didn't interrupt. Emma continued flipping open the binder. Exhibit A, she said, sliding over the original invention journal, handwritten notes, sketches, and early test logs, some dating back to 2021. All predating Dylan Caldwell's supposed contribution by at least a year. I glanced over. Dylan's lips tightened. Exhibit B, intellectual property filing under the pseudonym R.E. Caldwell dated August 14, 2023, with full technical specifications. She tapped the document. Time-stamped, signed, and backed by Northwestern University logs. Klein finally leaned forward, folding his hands. Miss Caldwell, he said, eyes cool behind silver-rimmed glasses, are you seeking damages, or is this simply a familial dispute taken too far? I met his gaze. I'm seeking the truth, on record. And how do we know this isn't about revenge? He asked. A vendetta against your family for perceived slights, favoritism? I sat straighter. Because I never asked for a single dollar. I asked to be seen. He blinked. A pause. Klein turned to Dylan. Did you at any point work collaboratively on this device? Dylan scoffed. She showed me her drafts. That doesn't mean she owns it all. Emma calmly interjected. Mr. Caldwell, did you file a single log under your name, contribute to the university trial group, submit technical specs? Dylan's jaw clenched. She slid another document across. This is Northwestern's log access history. Only Aaron's ID appears during development. Klein raised a hand. I'll need a moment with my client. He stood motioning for Dylan to follow into the hallway. I exhaled the silence left behind, thick and uneasy. Emma whispered, that was clean, stronger than we expected. Natalie squeezed my arm, but the quiet didn't last long. The door burst open again. Dylan stormed back inside, face flushed. He slammed his hand flat against the table. You planned this all along, he barked. I looked him in the eye, unmoving. No, I said quietly. You just thought I wouldn't fight. The moment their lies cracked, I didn't even have to push. The Caldwell family dining room had seen its share of forced smiles and staged congratulations, but that night the air inside pulsed with panic. The chandelier's dim light trembled slightly, as if even the bulbs were unsure what they were illuminating. I wasn't there. Not physically. But I was listening. The old house in Milwaukee hadn't changed much. Same mahogany table. Same floral curtains. But everything beneath the surface was beginning to rot. Natalie and I had arrived hours earlier under the pretense of her dropping off some medical equipment her clinic had borrowed from the family's storage. Instead, we had hidden a voice-activated recording pen behind the liquor cabinet in the adjacent study within perfect earshot of the entire conversation unfolding. This could ruin everything, Joanna hissed. Her voice was thin, sharp like a blade just before it breaks. Dylan didn't respond immediately. I could hear glass clink. Maybe he was pouring himself something stronger than excuses. She ambushed us, he finally said, with that damn patent and Torres backing her up, and now the school is watching. She's bluffing, Mark muttered. She doesn't have access to the trust documents. Those are sealed. Dad, Dylan said, his tone sliding toward exasperation. She had a copy of the tuition disbursement, the exact date, the name of the recipient. You signed it. Silence followed. Then my mother again. It doesn't matter. Erin's always wanted to prove we treated her differently. If we go public with her issues, make her look unstable, who's going to trust her narrative? I felt something twist in my chest. I knew they were capable of indifference. But this was orchestration. She was never supposed to know about the tuition account. Mark muttered low, almost inaudibly. Natalie's hand resting beside the hidden microphone gripped the recorder just a little tighter. I mean, he continued, we did what we had to do. Dylan had a future. Erin, she was always strange, tinkering with wires. She didn't need much. She didn't need much, Natalie whispered, eyes wide. She was listening live through a second device while I sat in Emma's office reviewing deposition strategy. The audio crackled briefly. Dylan's voice rose again. "She's going to leak this. I know it. We need to frame it first. Control the story." "And what do you suggest?" Joanna snapped. "Tell the world our daughter is bitter, that she's trying to tear down her own family out of jealousy." "She's not part of this legacy," my mother added flatly. "Never was." Natalie hit stop. Her hands were trembling. "She's not part of this legacy." She played it back. Again. Just to be sure. Then she opened her messages and forwarded the entire recording file to Emma. Without telling me. Back at my apartment, I was still poring over legal statutes and timelines when my phone buzzed. "Emma, your sister just made your case bulletproof." I stared at the screen. The weight of the sentence didn't land right away. My sister. Not a betrayal this time, but a reversal. When they looked to me for silence, I answered with documents. The chandelier above the Caldwell Foundation's annual boardroom shimmered with the kind of cold light that made everything beneath it feel clinical, precise, unforgiving. The Marriott in downtown Chicago buzzed with polite anticipation forks against plates, suits shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. They thought it would be another glossy performance of self-congratulation. They had no idea what was coming. I stood at the threshold for a moment before stepping into the room, watching them. All the board members, the foundation directors, a few familiar investors. At the head sat Dylan, flanked by my father, both already mid-smile, the rehearsed kind. That smile froze when they saw me. Emma followed closely, her briefcase tucked under one arm like a scalpel. We had timed this perfectly just after the financial performance update before the awards for philanthropic leadership. Dylan stood halfway, his voice brittle. "Aaron, this isn't a public forum." "No," I said, my voice calm, each word deliberate. "But it is a place where financial accountability matters, and I have something you missed." I moved to the center and plugged in the flash drive. The first document to appear on the projector was the Caldwell Family Trust's fund ledger, redacted for public release, but not for internal eyes. It showed a timeline, payment after payment, dates, dollar amounts, names. "I present to you," I said, "the misappropriation of $150,000 originally designated for shared educational support funneled exclusively to Dylan Caldwell for medical school. Without transparency, without consent." Gasps, murmurs. One man at the table leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. Another woman turned sharply to Richard, her expression stiffening. Before they could react, Emma stepped up. "Attached to this evidence," she said, "is an official civil complaint filed against Mr. Richard Caldwell and Dr. Dylan Caldwell for fiduciary fraud and intentional financial exclusion. We also have supporting audio." She played it. "She was never supposed to know about the tuition account." My father's voice echoed from the speakers, clear, undeniable. The room fell into a stunned silence. This is edited," Dylan burst out, face flushed. "This is malicious." "No," Emma said quietly. "This is admissible." Several board members began whispering. One of them, Mr. Lansing, the treasurer, stood. "We'll need an emergency motion. I propose immediate suspension of both Richard and Dylan Caldwell, pending legal review." "Seconded," another voice called. "All in favor." Hands rose one by one, unanimous. The door creaked open and a burst of camera flashes lit the hallway. The media had arrived just as planned. One of the interns must have slipped them the timing. I didn't look surprised. I wasn't. As reporters swarmed, my father stormed forward, eyes livid, pointing at me like I was something contagious. "This is betrayal," he roared into a cluster of microphones. I met his gaze, unwavering. "No," I said. "This is justice. They broke me for years. Now the silence was theirs." The front page of the Chicago Tribune didn't need sensationalism. The headline was "Clinical Caldwell Foundation Executives Suspended Over Misappropriation Claims." Underneath, a subheading quoted the recording, "She was never supposed to know about the tuition account." I stared at it from the steps of Northwestern's Biomedical Center, the cold morning wind sweeping through campus like a fresh breath after a storm. The students passed by without recognition except for Natalie, who approached with a cup of coffee, and that subtle smirk she wore when the truth finally caught up to liars. "They're freezing the foundation's assets this morning," she said, handing me the cup. "IRS is involved now. Emma's on call with their forensic team." I took a slow sip, letting the bitterness settle. And Dylan. Contract canceled. The oncology tech firm issued a statement: integrity concerns. He tried blaming the board for leaking internal documents. I didn't reply. The wind answered for me, rustling the leaves of the same courtyard I once crossed, wondering if I'd make tuition by the end of the quarter. I remembered the sting of selling my old laptop, of skipping meals so I could buy circuit parts. The silence back then hadn't been peaceful. It had been hollow. Now the silence belonged to them. My phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. "Dr. McAllister, New Horizons Biomedical, saw your work. Want to talk about a private research facility. Full funding. Your name on the door?" I closed the screen. Natalie nudged me. "That's not the kind of message you ignore." "I won't," I said. "Just not yet." Inside the lab, Dr. Torres was rearranging test kits. He nodded when I entered, but didn't say anything. No need to. This place had always been the opposite of home: chaotic but fair, imperfect but honest. As I walked past my old workstation, something shimmered from the wall, a framed announcement: VOC Sensor Project. Lead R.E. Caldwell. I reached up and touched the glass gently, then turned back toward my desk. I still had work to do. That afternoon, Emma stopped by the lab. Her blazer was rumpled and her voice hinted at exhaustion, but she held out a manila envelope like it was a peace offering. "Your mother," she said, "sent a proposal, a private agreement. No press, no court." I didn't open it, just placed it on the counter, unread. "You sure?" she asked. "Tell her it's not silence I want. It's truth. The rest she can keep." As Emma turned to leave, Natalie lingered near the glass door. "You really don't want to look back?" she asked softly. I met her eyes. There was no venom left in me, just resolve. "I already did," I said. "That's why I'm walking forward." And with that, I stepped back into the lab, the weight of ruin behind me and something that almost felt like freedom ahead. My family gave me nothing, so I built something they could never touch. The sun filtered softly through the glass-paneled ceiling of the new E.R. Caldwell Institute for Applied Bioengineering. Light danced across the polished concrete floors and the freshly installed displays lining the hall: molecular imaging breakthroughs, biodegradable diagnostic tools, student prototypes, each labeled not with legacy surnames, but initials, first names, nicknames, identity by merit, not blood. I stood on the stage, the mic cold in my hand, but my voice was steady. "Years ago, I was told I didn't belong to any legacy," I said. "That I wasn't worth investing in, but I was building something even then, in the quiet, in the margins, in the spaces no one else noticed." The audience of scientists, young students, faculty, and journalists listened, some leaning forward, others nodding. Emma stood near the front row, calm and composed in black. Dr. Torres was beside her, hands clasped behind his back, like the proud mentor he never stopped being. Natalie hovered off stage, already fielding inquiries, her badge now reading Communications Director ERCI. "I won't speak of those who tried to stop me," I continued, "because this isn't their story. This is about those who looked at a quiet, overlooked girl and said, 'Let's see what she builds.'" Applause rose, not explosive, but warm, grounded. The ribbon was cut, the doors opened. Inside the central exhibit hall, guests wandered through interactive labs. A wall bore engraved names of contributors and co-founders. Among them, Emma Lee, legal architect and honorary co-founder. Natalie Rivera, strategic comms lead, in honor of Dr. Ruth Caldwell, and at the center, founded by R.E. Caldwell. Later, as the crowd thinned, I returned to my office. It still smelled like fresh paint and new furniture. On the desk sat a small wooden box, the one Grandma Ruth had once handed me in secret. I opened it again now. Same inscription carved by hand: "Grow your own name." A quiet knock. Natalie peeked in, holding a thin envelope. Came in the outside mail slot, handwritten. I took it. No return address. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, neat cursive. You don't know me, but your story saved my daughter's future. She almost gave up on science. Then she heard you speak. She's applying to Northwestern. I held the note for a long moment, chest rising, slow eyes not misty but full. The kind of full that comes after rain finally ends. In the hallway, a new intern adjusted the focus on a microscope, while two high school girls argued over sensor calibration. Their voices echoed lightly off the walls of a place that hadn't existed until I made it. A photographer called Dr. Caldwell. One more shot for the closing press. I turned toward the lens, tucking the letter gently into my pocket. Let them keep the Caldwell name, I said, smiling. I'm building something better. They erased her from the family legacy, but she rewrote her name into something untouchable. What they hoarded in silence, she dismantled with evidence, no fury, just facts. Justice didn't arrive with applause or vengeance, but in the quiet hum of a nameplate mounted on a door they couldn't open. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Hay erased me from the legacy. I built one they could never touch. If you've ever been the one they overlooked, the one left out of the will, the conversation, the family photo, know this, you're not alone. Drop a comment if you've ever had to fight for your place in your own family. Share this if someone you love needs to be reminded that silence isn't peace, and truth doesn't need permission. And if you're still waiting to be seen, maybe this is your sign to stop waiting and start writing your own name on the door. Subscribe for more stories where justice doesn't scream. It simply shows up with receipts. Because no legacy built on exclusion deserves to last.